Bikers punched 90-year-old veteran, not knowing who his son is. It was a quiet Tuesday morning in the sleepy town of Rustwood, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's name, and most folks respected their elders. Henry Callahan, a 90-year-old World War II veteran, sat at his usual table outside the diner, sipping black coffee and feeding crusts of toast to a pair of birds who had come to expect him. He wore his old army jacket, his posture slightly stooped, but his eyes still clear and sharp. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. Anyone who knew Henry knew he'd seen things. Normandy, the Ardennes, Berlin, a living monument. But not everyone in town respected history. Around 9:30 a.m., the rumble of motorcycles shattered the peace. 3 men in patched jackets, members of the outlaw biker gang Steel Vultures, pulled up and parked on the curb like they owned it. They swaggered into the diner, laughing loud, shoving chairs aside. Inside, no one said anything, but everyone was watching. Henry didn't flinch. He just sipped his coffee as the bikers came back out 10 minutes later with their breakfast to go. One of them, Tank, a barrel-chested brute with a broken nose and brass knuckles, noticed Henry. "What's this? Old man dressed like he thinks he's still in the war?" he sneered. "Should've fought harder. Maybe you wouldn't be sitting out here feeding birds." Henry didn't answer. He just looked up and gave the man a look that had once made young soldiers freeze in line. But Tank wasn't a soldier. He was a coward. With a sick grin, Tank stepped forward and punched Henry square in the jaw. Gasps echoed from the diner window. Henry collapsed, bleeding from the mouth, still clutching his cup. The bikers laughed. "What's he gonna do?" Tank growled. "Call his nurse." But one of the waitresses had already dialed someone. Not 911, a number written in permanent ink on the wall behind the counter. "In case of trouble, call Jack." Jack Callahan was just finishing a training session at a secure facility 30 miles away, a place where the walls had no signs and the guards didn't wear name tags. His phone vibrated. One glance at the screen, and everything stopped. "Incoming." "Diner emergency," he stood, his voice cold and calm. "Send the car. My father's been attacked." The Steel Vultures hadn't even finished their coffee when the black SUV pulled up. It was matte, armored, and entirely unmarked. 4 doors opened in perfect sync. Out stepped Jack Callahan. Tall, square-shouldered, black t-shirt, combat boots, nothing flashy. But his presence made people back up instinctively. The Vultures scoffed. Tank stepped forward, still wiping Henry's blood from his knuckles. "Who the hell are you?" he asked. Jack didn't answer. Instead, he walked past them, knelt beside his father, and helped him up gently. "You okay, Dad?" Henry winced, nodding. Didn't see it coming. Jack's jaw tightened. He looked up. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "Which one?" Henry pointed, never taking his eyes off Tank. Jack stood and faced him. "I'm going to give you one chance," he said. "Apologize to my father, right now, or I make you regret the day you were born." Tank laughed. "Who do you think you are, pal? Some weekend warrior?" "No," Jack replied. "I'm the guy the Pentagon sends when they don't want survivors." Tank swung. Jack ducked. 2 seconds later, Tank was on the ground, screaming, his arm bent in a direction God never intended. The other 2 bikers lunged. Jack's response was like choreography, clean, ruthless, and fast. A foot to the knee, a palm to the throat, a twist of a wrist that sent one biker's weapon clattering across the street. 30 seconds later, all 3 Steel Vultures were writhing on the pavement. The crowd outside the diner watched in stunned silence. Jack walked back to his father, helped him into the SUV, and said to the waitress, "They come back. You call me. No police, just me." As the SUV pulled away, one of the bikers groaned. "Who is he?" The waitress walked up and dropped a napkin on Tank's chest. Scrawled in ink was a name, LT, Colonel Jack Callahan, Delta Force. From that day on, No one messed with Henry Callahan, because they knew exactly who his son was, and more importantly, what he was capable of. Word of the diner incident spread faster than wildfire through Rustwood and beyond. By that evening, the battered steel vultures had limped out of town, leaving behind skid marks, broken egos, and hospital bills. But their bruised pride wouldn't let them forget, and worse for them, wouldn't let them forgive. 3 days later, a black van with tinted windows rolled down Main Street around midnight, silent and slow. Inside were 4 unfamiliar bikers, reinforcements from the Steel Vulture's larger chapter upstate. Unlike the first crew, these men weren't drunks or these were enforcers. Tank, nursing a cast and a black eye, was in the back with them. "That's the house," he growled, pointing to a quiet cottage at the end of a tree-lined street. Henry Callahan's house. The leader, a man called Reaper, checked his pistol and nodded. "No mistakes tonight. The old man's just bait. We're here for his son." But they didn't know Jack Callahan had already returned. He had moved into his father's guest room temporarily, installing surveillance, reinforced locks, and trip sensors around the property. Jack knew the vultures wouldn't let it go. He counted on it, so when the silent alarm triggered, Jack was already up-dressed, armed, and deadly calm. Outside, the vultures crept across the lawn, weapons drawn. Tank stayed in the van. He'd had enough of Jack Callahan in person. Just as Reaper stepped onto the porch, the motion-activated floodlight snapped on. Then came the voice. "You shouldn't have come back." Jack was standing on the roof, shadowed, rifle slung across his chest. No fear in his voice, only warning. Reaper aimed. Jack dropped smoke. Pop, hiss, boom. A flashbang exploded just below them, sending 2 vultures to the ground, screaming, disoriented. Jack dropped from the roof like a ghost, landed on his feet, and went to work. 1 punch, 1 choke, 1 broken kneecap. In 90 seconds, all 4 men were down. Again, Jack dragged Tank out of the van. "You thought hurting my father was a warning," he hissed, slamming Tank against the hood. "You don't threaten men like him. You don't threaten families." "I didn't know who he was," Tank gasped. "You didn't care," Jack said, and showed him the patch on his sleeve. "Special Forces, Joe Presso the Bear." Then he opened the trunk of the van where surveillance photos, rope, and gasoline sat. "I could have you all arrested, but I won't, because the people you work for will see this." He tossed a flash drive into Tank's lap. GPS logs, audio recordings, and this night in camera. Tank was trembling now. Jack leaned in. "Tell your club this. If they ever breathe in my father's direction again, I won't just come back. I won't leave anything behind." The aftermath: the Steel Vultures disbanded their Rustwood chapter within a week. No press, no arrests, just silence. A silence built on fear. The sheriff asked Jack quietly if he'd consider running for office. He declined. "I'm just here for my father." Henry Callahan healed fast old soldier toughness. Every morning they sat outside the diner together. Coffee, toast, birds, peace. And when people passed by, they no longer just nodded to Henry. They nodded to the quiet man beside him, because now the whole town knew. You don't touch a 90-year-old veteran when his son is Delta Force.